Well, Happy New Year. This is 40 Minutes of Hell, the fast break, the Friday fast break. Here on 40 Minutes of Hell, I am your friend Joseph Craven with the first episode on the new year. The first episode in a while due to many different scheduling issues. Whoops. But this is an exciting time. This is, it's basketball season in full effect, in full bloom. It's wonderful. And it's been a real joy to watch the season thus far. And one interesting thing I did this year was, I decided to go ahead. It's not interesting that I bought NBA 2K19. I do that just about every year. It's pretty much the only sports game I routinely buy every year. But I decided this year I would get it on the Nintendo Switch, which I know is weird, but I got it on the Switch. And it's just to try it out this year. It was on sale around Christmas time. I've only had it for a little bit here. And I gotta say, it's a heck of a port. I mean, it's the full game, but entirely portable. It doesn't compare graphically. You don't notice it if you're playing the mobile version and you're playing on the actual Switch console screen. But the moment you plug it into the dock, you see that in the middle of games, honestly, it looks a little bit more like my PlayStation 3 than it does my PlayStation 4. But it's not terrible still. That's pretty much the only thing. Outside of that, I mean, it is the entire game. It is the entire NBA 2K game. So you can play my career, my GM, my league, my team, whatever my mode you have that you enjoy. You can play it entirely portable. Take it with you wherever you want to go. For me, I like to do the my GM mode. And I like to simulate a lot. Put up different scenarios, try to build a super team best I can in my GM, so on and so forth. So, there's that. That's what I like to do. So anyway, Nintendo Switch this season. Pretty interesting. That's been one of my bigger surprises. And speaking of surprises, that was entirely a segue. That entire bit I just did was a segue into what this episode is going to be. This episode is going to be a look at some of the biggest surprises that I've seen in both the Western and Eastern conferences. All right. I'm going to lead this off first and foremost by saying a couple of things that I am not surprised by. All right. Some things that I'm not surprised by. I am not surprised to see somebody else currently in the lead of the Western Conference other than the Golden State Warriors. I'm not really shocked by that at this point. And yes, I know that at the time of this recording, Golden State's only back by a half a game. So whatever, that's not like the biggest thing in the world. But I would not be shocked at all if Oklahoma City continue to give a lot of pressure, continue to put a lot of pressure on the Golden State Warriors in the West. And I'm not surprised by this, not necessarily because Denver and Oklahoma City are, are just that good. We all knew they were going to be pretty good teams. They had a lot of pieces there to build around. As soon as Oklahoma City was able to get rid of Carmelo, then apparently that was the secret there. But Denver's been slowly putting together a team that only really lacked one true star player. That was the biggest complaint for years, that Denver just didn't have that one star player. Well, they've got their dude down low right now. They've got the monster Nikola Jokic. I was trying to look up where Jokic was from. I believe he is Serbian, but I do not want to get that incorrect because that's highly offensive. Yes, he is Serbian. Big man. I mean, 7 foot, 250. What is he? Only 23 years old and putting together just a great career. The beginnings of what is a phenomenal career. Not only that, but I mean, you can't overlook Jamal Murray doing pretty well as a pro. Trey Lyles really coming into his own as that four that they badly needed. Be curious to see what happens in the future if we ever see a healthy Michael Porter Jr., if he turns into that elite wing that everyone expected him to be. But until then, I mean, Jokic has become, oh man, just so much fun to watch. A true, maybe best center in the league right now, caliber of player. I do say right now because you never know when somebody else will turn it up and return. I'm looking at like Joel Embiid, Karl Anthony Towns, when they might turn it up and return to form. But Jokic is so much fun to watch as a real big man plays in a more traditional post role. He doesn't try to handle the ball like Karl Anthony Towns. He doesn't really live on the perimeter like Kristaps Porzingis. It's fun. It's fun. He's very reminiscent of like an Arvydas Sabonis type of guy, in particular, but he's very reminiscent in a lot of ways of someone like an Akeem Olajuwon in the way that he can maneuver down low. I think he's just kind of slower, a little bit clunkier than Akeem. Obviously, you're talking about with Olajuwon, maybe the best true center of all time. So but I don't know. Jokic is fun. He's good. And so it's no real surprise that Denver is good. But where it really is not surprising to me is that Golden State has won a handful of titles now. And it doesn't really matter how good you are. It's hard to string together 3 in a row in particular. That's kind of the one that people always talk about as the hardest to do because you have so much to fight against. You already know that you can win a title. You already know that you're probably favorites to win a title. You already know what it takes to win a title. But, I mean, the question comes into where does the motivation come to win that, like, 3rd in a row? Where's the motivation in that? Which I totally understand, and it makes a lot of sense. It's just hard to fight. You're not trying to prove anything anymore. It's easier to lose that 3rd year and come back and win after a year off than anything else because the motivation is there to right what went wrong and say, no, this is not who we are. We're better than this. I'm not surprised because of that. I'm not surprised that Golden State is possibly lacking a little bit of motivation up till now in the season, and I would not be shocked if they ended the season. Now, granted, it's still very early on. We're not even a halfway point, all of that, but it wouldn't be surprised if they ended the season I don't know, in the 2, maybe even the 3 spot, depending on how hot the Nuggets and Thunder get, and if Golden State, struggles a little bit. There's a lot of season yet to be played, so we'll have to figure that out. But I'm not really surprised by that. In the East, something I'm not surprised by, I'm not really surprised obviously not surprised that Toronto's number 1 in the East, that they've been one of the best teams in the East for a while now. Even after the stupid move of firing a very successful coach for, essentially no reason. I still disagree with that, but whatever. I'm not really surprised by that. I am not surprised either that Kawhi Leonard is playing for them and playing so well for them. As we speak, of course, they're having that game where he is back in San Antonio and getting booed. That is actually live right now as I'm recording. Got it up in front of me. It's hilarious. But I'm not shocked because that's just kind of there's one thing we know about Kawhi. It's that for everything negative about the move, the wanting to be traded, whatever it is, the hiding from team officials and lying about injuries, whatever all that weirdness is that we still have no idea what it truly was. And oh my goodness, there's actually a DeMar DeRozan and Kawhi Leonard jump ball happening right now. It's like a subplot within a subplot within a subplot. Anyway, San Antonio's spanking Toronto right now. Kawhi Leonard is a hardworking player, maybe the hardest working player in the league, just in terms of the mentality he brings to every game and every situation. So I am not shocked at all to see him give his all to Toronto to really try to make Toronto work. I don't think he sticks around for another year after this, but he's there now and he is playing for Toronto now. And this would be a good time to clarify. When I say that I'm not surprised or by something that's going on here, I'm not saying that I predicted it, that I saw it coming. I just mean that when I look at the situation, there's a logic behind it that I can understand. And that's what I mean more than anything else. I'm not surprised when I look at it. It makes some sort of sense to me. That's what I mean by this in general. Because there are some things we'll talk about in a little bit that when I look at it, I'm like, man, that does not make sense to me that it's working out the way it is right now. And I'm not shocked by their success. I'm not shocked that he's playing for them. And I'm not honestly all that shocked that the 76ers are not the elite team in the East that we all thought they were going to be because, well, at the end of the day, that's a lot to balance. And I think they shook up the pecking order too much by getting Jimmy Butler. I think that was a dumb move. I don't care what Jimmy Butler might bring to you. I think that was a dumb move to have brought in another alpha dog on a team that did not need that. And I think it's just chemistry-wise is shaking everything up way too much. So that move I did not think was going to be I didn't think it was going to kill the team, and it hasn't, and they're still sitting in fourth place in the East. They're only 3 games back. They get a little bit more momentum. They get a little bit more going their way. It's totally fine, and we're not even talking. We'll months from now, we'll be like, oh, man, do you remember when, for whatever reason, we thought the 76ers were going to struggle? How weird is that? So I'm not really shocked by that. But 2 things I am shocked about. Let's start with one over there in the Eastern Conference, and that is the teams that are in the playoff hunt right now compared to the teams that are not in the playoff hunt. And in particular, I'm looking at the Miami Heat. The aging should be done. Miami Heat, being pretty much led by, old Dwayne Wade. Goran Dragic being hurt now and probably out to the All-Star break will hurt a little bit, but they're currently in, 6th place in the East. They're winning games behind leading scorer Josh Richardson. 3rd leading scorer, a 37-year-old Dwayne Wade. They're still getting Hassan Whiteside. What is he getting? Like almost 13 rebounds a game right now? That's absurd. It's just surprising to see the Heat doing what they're doing when really they should have been done for at this point. I'm not saying that they're going to be, definitely not, title contenders. I'm willing to bet that is not the case. But they're getting some decent minutes out of Bam Adebayo. It's Josh Richardson that I think comes back to me as being the, wow, really? Okay, he's doing that. He played at Tennessee, who is good this year, but not exactly a men's basketball powerhouse. I'm just throwing that out there. But to see him doing what he's doing right now in kind of a, he kind of reminds me of Eddie Jones a little bit. I don't know if that's the best comparison to make, but that's the comparison that kind of stands out a little bit. Eddie Jones was a guy who, similar height, build, 6'6", shooting guard, small forward, and everything. But for most of his career was always a good scorer and not necessarily like the elite scorer. I'm looking at his career right now. The highest points that he ever averaged in a year was 20.1 points per game. And that was in 99 to 2000, where he played for the Charlotte Hornets. There we go. That was his second season in Charlotte. After he had been replaced by Kobe Bryant in LA, right before he went to Miami, and then kind of trained up Dwayne Wade. Anyway, Richardson's kind of reminded me of him right now, in that Richardson can put together. He's averaging 18.5 points a game, so like good numbers, not like jaw-dropping numbers there. Shooting 43% from the field, shooting almost 40% from deep, which is pretty cool. And so it's kind of this very unlikely success story right now in Miami, because if you told me that like there was a roster that featured your most frequently featured players were Bam Adebayo, Josh Richardson, Rodney McGruder, Kelly Olynyk, Hassan Whiteside, and Justice Winslow, I'd say that is not sure that team's really going to win anything. Goran Dragic, I'm not including in this right here. He, as far as minutes per game goes, he'd be third on the team because he's only played in 14 games. But as far as minutes per game go, you've got Josh Richardson leading the way, Rodney McGruder, Dragic, Justice Winslow, Hassan Whiteside, Tyler Johnson, and Dwayne Wade putting in 25.5 minutes a game. All right, you got a 37-year-old Dwayne Wade putting in 25.5 minutes per game and scoring 14 points a game for you, and you're sitting in a playoff spot in the East right now. And I get that, the common belief is that the East is just not as good, the East, all that. I don't know if that's quite as true. I think that the West has a whole lot of okay teams that kind of beat up on each other a little bit. I mean, yeah, I think Denver, Golden State, OKC are elite right now. I don't know if Houston is still really in that discussion because Houston seems a little off this year. But like Portland's not an elite team. The Clippers are not an elite team. The Lakers are not an elite team. The Spurs are not really an elite team like they have been. The Kings are not elite. The Grizzlies are not elite. The Mavericks are not elite. And these are all the teams that are sitting there in like the middle ground of like maybe playoff contention in the West. And you can't tell me that any of those teams are necessarily that much better than the Miami Heat, the Charlotte Hornets right now, who are, kind of hitting their stride a little bit. Anyway, what is another thing that is surprising me in the East, though, are the struggles of the Washington Wizards. The Wizards have been a playoff team for a while now. It seems like every year they're in there as kind of I'll look it up real quick while, might as well, while we're talking about it. But I mean, you look at playoff appearances last season, 16 to 17 season, 14 and 15 season, 13 and 14 season. Yeah, things were bleak from 2009 till 2013, but that's 4 playoff appearances in the past 5 years. Not only that, you've got Eastern Conference semifinals. You're at least making it out of the first round 3 out of those 4 times. And then you've got this duo that people think is one of the, or supposed to be one of the best duos in like the NBA in terms of John Wall and Bradley Beal. But they just never have been able to push it over the edge. And I really liked when they had the John Wall, Bradley Beal, Nene, and Marcin Gortat lineup. Like, that was an awesome group, I thought. I thought that was a really, really cool group. I thought that they, I don't know, I thought that was a very complete guard duo and post duo in terms of what they brought to the table. And there just was always something missing that Washington was never able to really, to really push them over the edge. And that is hurting them tremendously right now, obviously, in that it seems like there's something going wrong with like the star players. It seems like they've lost interest. They want to change the scenery, go somewhere that's maybe winning a little bit more. It's a shame if that is kind of the way things end here. But it's shocking to me to see Washington struggle like they are, because I figured Washington was probably never going to be a championship contending sort of squad, but I thought at least would be a type of squad that would, be the model of consistency in terms of making the playoffs, making it out of the first round of the playoffs, and at least pushing somebody who would go on to lead the East, make them struggle just a little bit. Here's something interesting. In the time that, John Wall has been with the Wizards, since 2009, okay? No, I'm sorry, the 2010 season. There we go. Since the 2010 season, there's this interesting metric that I don't really know what all you can actually do with it. I don't know if it is really I don't know. It's a tricky one. It's the win shares metric. And that is basically the supposedly mathematical way that you can measure how much one player, how many games they actually win for the team. Like them having them in there wins this many games. I'm going to be basically pulling this explanation entirely off of Wikipedia. Basically no research at all as to how this exactly works. But this guy Bill James developed the concept of win shares in the sport of baseball a while back as a way to determine how many victories a baseball player contributed to his team each year. When metrics and advanced statistics became very popular in the NBA, because of course baseball has had their forms of advanced statistics for years and years and years now, but when the NBA started to really develop into that, then it was easier to kind of calculate the advanced ways that players directly impacted games from a metric and statistical standpoint. Win shares can be calculated for basketball, and they really are supposed to be based on an entire season to estimate the number of wins that a player produces for his team. I'm not going to go any more details to how they developed this, okay? But look it up. I'll do an entire episode. How about this? I promise you I'll do an entire episode where I actually just talk about win shares and what win shares are, and whether or not I actually think that they matter, or are accurate or whatever it may be. But win shares are an interesting way of kind of trying to measure the impact of a player. So since 2010, when John Wall was drafted number 1 overall by the Washington Wizards, he has only led the team in win shares once, the 2011 and 2012 season, where they also had 2 different coaches, Flip Saunders and then Randy Whitman. So John Wall impacted his team, but did not lead his team in the amount of games like one, basically, if you go by the win shares numbers there. In fact, through the time that he's been there, Brandon Haywood, JaVale McGee, all right, Brandon Haywood in 09 and 10. That would have been the year before then. JaVale McGee in 2010 and 11, John Wall his second year, Martell Webster 2012 and 13, Marcin Gortat 13 and 14, through 15 and 16. So 3 straight seasons where Marcin Gortat really gave the most win shares to the team. Then Otto Porter, the past 2 seasons, has been the most valuable player on the Wizards based off of win shares. So John Wall and Bradley Beal have never been that for their teams outside of John Wall's second year in the league. I think that's very interesting, and it could be a sign of the fact that those 2 guys were not the ones that actually build the team around together or something like that. I don't know. It's very weird. But anyway, the Wizards' struggles right now, that's surprising me. I figured they would be at least consistently good, and right now they're not really looking like that. Obviously, again, a lot of time to turn it around, so no big deal. Something that is shocking to me in the Western Conference, and that's the success of the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, right now, they are dropping down to, I believe, 7th place in the West as of the time of this recording. But it was just, like about a week ago, they were up in 4th place. It's early enough where, one game basically changes the entire lineup of the standings themselves. Unless you are, the Washington Wizards, in which you are currently 12 and a half games out of first place and even like 3 or 4 games out of playoff talk right now. Yikes. So the Lakers, I did not expect to be in the playoff discussion, and I know it seems stupid, and maybe I was just trying to be like biased towards the fact that I think LeBron James going to LA was a dumb idea on his part. But we do continue to see the LeBron James effect with the Los Angeles Lakers right now and the way that he has impacted that team. Because, again, all right, let's look at games played, most amount of games played, and most amount of minutes here. If you told me that you're going to try to field a team that had second year Kyle Kuzma, second year Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and then Lance Stevenson being like your 5th most used players in terms of how often they appear in games. Minutes-wise, it's LeBron number 1, but then Kuzma, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, Rajon Rondo, and JaVale McGee. If you told me like that was what was going on in terms of the players that you really had in your steady rotation, I would tell you that was a team that was going to sit firmly at the bottom of the Western Conference. But then you add in LeBron James, and you see the LeBron James impact and the fact that the man just makes teams better. All right. And it's not just his statistical input. It's just the way that he plays, the way that he mentors, how smart he is about the game, how much he understands. He can make crappy teams like the Lakers that much better. And yeah, I do mean crappy teams. Look at the 2017 and 18 season where they were at 35 and 47 and finished 11th place. All right, in the West. Who was on that roster? Who was used the most in terms of minutes played per game? Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Andre Ingram, Kyle Kuzma. All right. You have a lot of the same guys there. Man, they had a lot of people rotate through. I'm looking at it right now. Derek Williams, Thomas Bryant, Nigel Hayes, Vander Blue, Andrew Bogut, Ivica Zubac, Gary Payton, Tyler Ennis, Corey Brewer, Lou Alding, Travis Ware, Alex Caruso, Channing Frye, Larry Nance, Josh Hart, Brooke Lopez, Jordan Clarkson, Julius Randle, Isaiah Thomas, Kyle Kuzma, Andre Ingram, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Brandon Ingram, and Lonzo Ball. 24 different players played for the Lakers last season. That is insane. Anyway, so just looking at that, yes, they're all young, so you expect them to develop. Especially when you've got such a young core, you expect them to develop together. But to go from 11th place and have a whole bunch of second-year players and already be in the playoff discussion and already have those guys contributing on a higher level, to see Kuzma look like basically invaluable player. 18.3 points per game right now, 5.8 rebounds, 2.4 assists. Needs to work on those stats now that I look at them more for a forward. But anyway, but playing the second most amount of minutes on the team. There's some chemistry issues in terms of maybe Brandon Ingram can't be on the court at the same time as LeBron because they just don't complement each other well. Maybe Lonzo Ball is just not being used enough or not, I don't know, adjusting enough. He's only got 5.1 assists per game and 9.4 points per game. But either way, this is a better performance so far from the Lakers. And than I expected, and I still think that LeBron James moving to LA was not a basketball move, and that rather it was a preparing for his retirement move. And there's this part of that of me saying that is based around the recent comments coming from that I guess it's an ESPN documentary that's been coming out, showing some of LeBron's during the 2016 championship run, where he's looking at game tape. He says that play right there, that made me the best player of all time. If someone is looking at something that they did 2 seasons ago and making that comment, if they believe that about themselves from something they did 2 years ago, then they do not think that they have anything else to prove in basketball. All right? Now, that does not mean that he does not want to succeed. Obviously, he is a competitor. He wants to win. But if he already believes that he has cemented himself in as the best basketball player to have ever played basketball, he doesn't feel like he needs to prove to anyone else. When someone else says, I still think MJ's better, LeBron does not respond with, oh yeah? Well then let me try to do this. No, LeBron's going to say, I disagree with you. Here's my resume. This is what I've done. I'm the best. See ya. He's not going to care. He's not going to feel like he has to prove anyone wrong when they don't think that he was the best to have ever played. He already believes that about himself. So the move to LA was not a basketball move. The move to LA was, it was a move for his family, because I think his kids wanted to play out there, to develop out there and live out there, and move to, be involved in more movies. He wants to be out in Hollywood. He wants his filming schedule to work with his basketball schedule. He feels like he felt like he doesn't owe anything else to Ohio, which after bringing a title to Cleveland and opening up the I Promise school and all that, maybe he doesn't owe anything else to anyone else. And I don't think he does at all. I just think that at this point, LeBron James does not owe anybody anything. And that's good. I don't like that about him a lot. I like a humble player. I prefer a player that doesn't brag about their accomplishments or something. But if someone could say, I think I'm the best player of all time, and it's because I've done this and I don't owe anyone else anything, I think that's totally justified, especially because of what he has done. LeBron James doesn't owe me a single thing. He doesn't owe you a single thing. If you're listening to this and you have opinions about LeBron James, he probably doesn't really care what you think about him, and he doesn't feel like he owes you anything, and I like that about him. I don't think he's the best who've ever done it. But he's one of the absolute best who've ever done it. And if you ask me who the best basketball player of all time is, depending on the day, it's going to change. My answer is going to change. And that's fine. I think it's great. I would much rather sit back and enjoy watching LeBron James for everything he's done, even the stuff I hate, like going to Miami, and not sit around nitpicking everything. Because he doesn't owe me anything. And you know what? I don't owe him anything by trying to nitpick everything that he's ever done. So anyway, the Lakers having success is kind of surprising to me. I didn't expect the LeBron James effect to work with this raggedy group of nobodies like washed up Rajon Rondo, Lance Stevenson, who kind of looked like he'd been living under a bridge until he was signed by the team. That sort of stuff. But it's working. The veterans are really enjoying getting back with LeBron, working with LeBron. I don't know. It's interesting. It's very interesting. But one thing that is shocking to me right now is the way that the New Orleans Pelicans have been struggling. They're sitting in And this is the main difference in the East and West division or conferences. I will say this, you do have someone sitting there in New Orleans who is in next to last place, but still is only 9 games back from top spot in the West, and still is only about 4.5 games, 5 games back from being in the playoffs. So it's like it's not that drastic, but they're still in next to last place in the West. And this is a team that not just made the playoffs last year, but swept the Trailblazers in the first round of the playoffs. A team that has one of the most impressively dynamic players in the NBA right now. In fact, if you look at the metrics and the way things are going right now, he currently, going back to that weird win shares thing, he currently leads the NBA in win shares so far on the year. 6.7 games are won simply by Anthony Davis being there, which is pretty impressive. But right now they are 17-22. They do have a losing record. They are in next to last place in the West. They are losing a lot of games in a row. And the thing is, they're losing a lot of games right at the very end. Okay, there was a statistic that a beat writer for the Pelicans, maybe the SB Nation writer, I'd have to look it up so I could actually give him credit. That's on me for not doing my research before I hit record. But he looked at the fact that basically in like this 14 games that they had lost over this stretch of like 15 or 16 games, how like all of those games were basically lost due to about 26 minutes of actual game time. That's not a whole lot. It basically is the end of game situations. The Pelicans do not have it in them to close out games. Part of that's due to the fact that their defense is just not matching what their offense is producing. Because they made some great off-season moves. Elfrid Payton and Julius Randle have been 2 off-season steals for the Pelicans. I know Payton has only really played in 8 games so far, but he's double-digit scoring, 5.6 assists a game. A great backup, a great alternative to Drew Holiday. Probably similar player in terms of like skill set, like about the same height, I believe. Peyton may be a little bit taller, but good vision, but also good defensively. Julius Randle, I mean, what can you say about a man that over the 18 games that he's played, he's averaging almost 20 points a game. The 38 games he's played, the 18 games he started. I mean, he comes off the bench for the majority of the games. 20 of the games that he's played in, he's coming off the bench. He's still averaging almost 20 points a game, 19.9, 9.3 rebounds a game. He's a heck of a player. I really like what he brings, especially because he's developed much more of like a wing and ball handling type of play. And he and Nikola Mirotic, I love what they bring to any team. Because they can be a post player that can handle the ball, Nikola can shoot a 3. The thing is, neither of them are true wings, and that hurts the Pelicans quite a bit because they do not have anyone on the wing who is really worth anything. Their most frequently used wing player is Darius Miller or Solomon Hill. And these are 2 guys that just don't bring you much of anything at all. Neither of them rebound. Hill brings in 3.3 rebounds a game. Neither of them score, but they're 2 guys that end up seeing a lot of starts. Etuan Moore, of course, has been a good scorer, but he's pretty much just like he's a true guard. He's not really your like wing guy. He's not your small forward type of guy that you really want to have. Wesley Johnson has been starting. He started, I think, the most games. He started more than Solomon Hill, but again, 3.8 points a game, 2.3 rebounds a game. Like oh my gosh, it's just disgusting. There's no true wing in New Orleans, and it's hurting them. But it's the defense that comes. I mean, they can score a lot of points. All right, they just can. Let's look at the points per game. They lead the entire Western Conference, second in the NBA in points per game. 116.3 points per game behind only the Milwaukee Bucks, who score a clean 117. That would be wonderful if not for the fact that they give up the second most points in the Western Conference at 115.5. There is barely not even a 1 point difference between what they give up and what they actually score. And that's devastating. In fact, That's one of the worst numbers. I believe that's the 5th worst points allowed in the entirety of the NBA. The only teams allowing more points are the New York Knicks, the Sacramento Kings, the Washington Wizards, who I already mentioned. Obviously, that's a lot of their troubles there, and the Atlanta Hawks, who we kind of expected would give up a lot of points. Anyway, they don't have anyone on their roster. And so this is really, really shocking for a team that boasts 2 of the most dominant defensive players in the entire league in Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday. Guys that are in the running for, Defensive Player of the Year, first team all defense. I mean, all of that sort of stuff. It's shocking to see them struggle so much on the defensive side of things. Anthony Davis and Drew has missed a few games. I don't think Drew Holiday has missed any games yet. But the team as a whole is not pulling their weight. And I don't know if that's Julius Randle, Nikola Mirotic are not the type of guys that can defend efficiently. That probably is part of it. Etuan Moore, maybe not the most stout defender there is, but also they just don't have anyone that is a wing defender essentially at all. Wesley Johnson, Solomon Hill, Darius Miller. I mean, these are not the names that you think of when you think of guys that are really locked down defenders. Maybe Wesley Johnson at one point, but I feel like Wesley Johnson has never really developed into the pro that he should have been to justify that. Wasn't that a top 10 pick? I believe it was. I believe he was. Yeah, he was 4th overall back into the 2010 draft. I don't know. It's just for every good roster move that was done in the offseason, the Pelicans still are obviously lacking something on the wing and lacking the defensive cohesion that would really make them the supposedly dominant force in the West that they're supposed to be. The offense is there. The offense is clicking. My goodness, the offense is clicking. If they're able, and we know they push the tempo a lot. They did that a lot last season. But if you're able to just do anything on the defensive side of things, then it's a completely different team. And it's a team that would probably be one of the better teams in the West. We could be looking at, the Nuggets, Warriors, Thunder, Rockets, Pelicans as being that top 5 for sure. But instead, they're sitting there next to the bottom in the Western Conference because they're defensive issues. If you look at the adjusted defensive rating, all right, so this is an estimate of points allowed per 100 possessions, all right, based on the strength of the opponent's offense. So, how much the opponent scores per game and all of that. So if you look at the amount of points per 100 possessions that teams are giving up so far on the season, like OKC, Indiana, Milwaukee, Utah, Memphis, these are all teams that don't give up that many points per 100 possessions. You go to the bottom, Cleveland's given up the most points per possession, they have the worst adjusted defensive rating. The Knicks with them, the Wizards, again, there's the Wizards' issues. That's why they're struggling so much this year. The Suns, the Hawks, the Nets, the Pelicans right there I believe that is they're the 7th worst in terms of defensive rating so far. And so if you want to look and wonder what it is that's going wrong with the Pelicans right now, this is it. They just flat out can't play defense at all anymore. They're just not doing it as a whole. It can be fixed, and it has to be fixed if they want to have any hope of keeping Anthony Davis around. Because he does seem to want to be there. He seems like he wants to be a lifelong New Orleans guy, but the team is just not pulling. They're pulling some good moves, and I think Elfrid Payton, Nikola Mirotic last year was great, but Elfrid Payton, Julius Randle this offseason are very good moves, but they're just not pulling in the types of guys that are leading to, creating win shares, I guess. They're not bringing in win shares types of players. And it's going to hurt them tremendously eventually here. All right, I'm going to wrap this episode of the Fast Break up real quick. But those are 4 of the surprising things and 2 things that aren't surprising me so far in this still fairly early stretch of the season. Let me know what it is that is shocking you. What has surprised you about the NBA so far? Let me know if you've got NBA 2K19 and how you feel about that. Let me know if you want to, see me stream a little bit, manage a little bit of a team, that sort of thing. I don't know. Just shout me out. I just want to have friends to talk basketball with. I'm your friend Joseph Craven. Thanks for listening to this episode of 40 Minutes of Hell. I'll see you next time.